What if I told you that the modern-day nation of Iran, yes, that Iran, holds an absolutely critical and central position within the Bible's sweeping narrative of prophecy and world history? When most people consider the geographical stage of the scriptures, their minds naturally turn to Israel, Egypt, or Babylon. Yet, the nation we now call Iran, known in biblical times as Persia, was far more than just a passing empire. It was a nation uniquely named and destined by prophecy to profoundly influence and shape the fate of God's chosen people. The biblical origin story of the Iranians is far more intricate and compelling than commonly understood. Their history, stretching from the direct lineage of Noah down to the magnificent reign of Cyrus the Great, is deeply interwoven with the most pivotal moments recorded in the scriptures. But the truly astonishing revelation is this: God strategically employed Persia, a realm led by pagan kings, to facilitate the deliverance of Israel, finance the rebuilding of the Jerusalem temple, and spectacularly fulfill prophecies declared centuries earlier. Throughout this discussion, we will explore the scriptures to uncover the origins of the Iranian people, trace their dramatic ascent to world power, and highlight their undeniable central role in shaping both the historical accounts of the Old Testament and the dramatic prophetic visions of the future. Prepare yourself, because what you are about to discover will fundamentally alter your perspective on Iran, seeing it not merely as a nation in the contemporary world, but as an indispensable player in God's ultimate, unfolding plan for global history. To truly grasp Iran's deep biblical roots, our journey must begin with the foundational narrative of Noah and his direct descendants. Following the Great Flood, Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the progenitors of all subsequent nations on earth. Based on the detailed table of nations in Genesis 10, Japheth's lineage includes Madai, recognized as the ancestor or progenitor of the Medes. These Medes would eventually become inextricably linked with the Persians, together forging the powerful Medo-Persian Empire, one of the most vast and influential powers in ancient history. Madai's descendants, the Medes, established themselves in the geographical territory corresponding to modern Iran, while the Persians, originating from the same broad region, rose to military prominence later. Both groups shared a common, ancient Iranian heritage. Thus, the biblical record establishes the Iranian people's lineage through Japheth via Madai, integrating them into the sacred narrative from the very dawn of post-flood history. This critical connection links the Iranian people to one of the oldest genealogies documented in the Bible and powerfully sets the stage for their significant role in the subsequent history of God's people. Fast forward several centuries, and we witness the dramatic rise of Persia, a kingdom that would assume a uniquely crucial role in the biblical narrative. The Medes and Persians cemented their alliance under the masterful leadership of Cyrus the Great, who went on to establish the Achaemenid Empire, often referred to as the First Persian Empire. At its zenith, the mighty Persian Empire stretched geographically from the Indus River deep into North Africa, successfully encompassing many of the major regions cited in the Bible, including Israel, Babylon, and Egypt. But Persia's importance extended far beyond its massive territorial reach and military might. Its true significance lies in the strategic manner in which God used its power to fulfill his ancient promises to the Israelites. The preceding Babylonian Empire, under King Nebuchadnezzar, had devastated Jerusalem in 586 BC, destroying the Holy Temple and forcing the people of Judah into exile. The Israelites remained in Babylonian captivity for a full 70 years, precisely as prophesied by Jeremiah. Then came Cyrus the Great, the Persian king who conquered Babylon in 539 BC, immediately signaling a monumental shift in world events. The Book of Ezra opens with a powerful decree issued by Cyrus, permitting the Israelites to return to their homeland and begin the monumental task of rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem. This pivotal moment is explicitly recorded in Ezra 1 verses 2-4, where Cyrus declares, "The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judah." Remarkably, Cyrus, a foreign pagan king, had been named by the prophet Isaiah over a century earlier as the specific individual who would carry out God's divine will to restore Israel, Isaiah 44 verse 28 and Isaiah 45 verse 1. In one of the most astonishing occurrences in biblical history, Persia, a nation entirely outside of God's covenant with Abraham, became the essential instrument of God's redemption for his people. This marked a profound turning point for Israel and cemented the central role of Persia within God's overarching divine plan. One of the most remarkable aspects of Persia's biblical legacy is the unparalleled role ascribed to Cyrus the Great. In Isaiah 44 verse 28, God refers to Cyrus by name, more than 150 years before the king's actual birth, calling him my shepherd, who would fully accomplish God's purposes. Even more strikingly, in Isaiah 45 verse 1, Cyrus is referred to as God's anointed, a title that was typically reserved exclusively for the divinely chosen kings of Israel. How could a foreign, pagan monarch be accorded such a sacred title? The answer is found in God's absolute sovereignty and his infinite ability to use anyone, even those explicitly outside his covenant community, to achieve his transcendent will. Cyrus's landmark decree, which allowed the Jews to return and rebuild the temple, was not merely a political calculation. It was a precise prophetic fulfillment. The prophet Jeremiah had precisely foretold that the Babylonian captivity would endure for 70 years, Jeremiah 25 verses 11 to 12, Jeremiah 29 verse 10, and Cyrus's rise to power effectively marked the termination of that prophesied period. The subsequent rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem, overseen by Zerubbabel with the full support and blessing of Cyrus, represented a critical step in the restoration of Israel. God had strategically used Persia not only to defeat Babylon, the empire that had oppressed Israel, but also to actively facilitate Israel's rebirth as a sovereign nation. This served as an eternal reminder to Israel and to the wider world that God's plan is far greater than any single empire, and he can deploy even the most improbable figures to bring about his destined purposes. Persia's vital role in biblical history did not conclude with Cyrus and the restoration of the temple. The Book of Esther provides another potent example of God's utilization of Persia to protect his people. During the reign of King Xerxes I, also known as Ahasuerus in the Bible, a heinous plot was conceived by Haman, a high official in the Persian court, aimed at the wholesale extermination of all Jews residing throughout the empire. Haman's virulent hatred for the Jewish people led him to successfully manipulate the king into issuing a decree authorizing their annihilation. However, through a striking display of divine providence, a young Jewish woman named Esther had ascended to the position of Queen of Persia. Encouraged by her cousin Mordecai, Esther took the immensely brave and dangerous step of approaching the king, revealing her Jewish identity, and passionately pleading for the survival of her people. Esther 4 verse 14 contains the famous words of Mordecai to Esther. "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther's courageous intervention resulted in a dramatic and absolute reversal of fortune. King Xerxes, upon discovering Haman's treacherous plan, immediately ordered his execution, and a new decree was issued allowing the Jews to actively defend themselves against their enemies. This narrative, recorded in the Book of Esther, is celebrated annually during the Jewish festival of Purim as a powerful commemoration of how God used Persia, and specifically Queen Esther, to miraculously preserve the Jewish people. The story of Esther is a testament to divine providence and protection. Once again, Persia, though a foreign power, became the very instrument through which God's covenant people were safeguarded. God's protective hand was evident throughout the entire story, using the extensive Persian Empire as the essential backdrop for this miraculous deliverance of the Jews from total annihilation. This vividly demonstrates how Persia, though not a part of the covenant people of Israel, continued to play an indispensable, central role in the unfolding of God's redemptive plan. Persia was never merely a passive observer. It was an active participant in guaranteeing the survival of Israel, the nation destined to bring forth the Messiah. The Bible does not limit its discussion to Persia's historical role. It also firmly places Persia at the very heart of prophetic visions concerning the future of world empires and God's ultimate design for humanity. One of the most powerful examples of this is found in the book of Daniel. Daniel, a Jewish prophet who lived through the trials of the Babylonian exile, served in the courts of both the Babylonian and subsequent Persian empires. In the book of Daniel, we encounter several complex visions that graphically reveal the rise and fall of major empires, including Persia. In Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon dreams of a colossal statue composed of various materials, each representing a distinct world empire. The silver chest and arms of this massive statue symbolize the Medo-Persian Empire, which was prophesied to succeed Babylon as the dominant global power in the ancient world. Later, in Daniel 7, Daniel himself sees a vision of 4 great beasts representing 4 successive empires. The second beast, depicted as a bear raised up on one side, represents the Medo-Persian Empire, symbolizing its dual nature and the combined strength of the Medes and Persians. This empire was destined to be vast, and its expansion, particularly under Cyrus, would irrevocably alter the course of human history. Another deeply significant vision involving Persia is detailed in Daniel 8, where the prophet sees a ram with 2 horns, one horn symbolizing the Medes and the other the Persians, aggressively charging in all directions and conquering vast territories. However, the vision also includes a swift goat with a prominent horn, representing Greece and its mighty king, Alexander the Great, who would ultimately conquer the Persian Empire. These visions incontrovertibly position Persia at the core of God's prophetic timeline, showing that the empire's ascent and eventual demise were not mere accidents of history, but were integrated parts of God's precise divine plan. Persia's period of global influence was prophesied to give way to the rise of Greece, but it was specifically during Persia's reign that God's people experienced both deliverance and restoration, thus fulfilling the detailed prophecies of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. Although the Persian Empire eventually succumbed to Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC, its lasting influence continued to be strongly felt, even reaching into the time of the New Testament. By the time of Jesus' birth, the Persian Empire had been superseded by the Greek and, subsequently, the formidable Roman empires. Nevertheless, the profound legacy of Persian culture, governance, and administrative genius left an indelible imprint on the ancient world. One of the more enduring and mysterious connections between Persia and the New Testament is the famous story of the Magi, the wise men who traveled to worship the infant Jesus described in Matthew 2. Many reputable scholars believe that the Magi likely originated from the region of Persia and may have been Zoroastrian priests. These priests were part of an ancient religious tradition in Persia that specialized in astrology and the interpretation of omens. The deliberate journey of the Magi to honor the newborn king of the Jews underscores Persia's sustained connection to the biblical story, even centuries after the collapse of the Persian Empire. The learned wisdom traditions of Persia continued to influence the ancient Near East, and it was these Persian scholars who recognized the profound significance of the star that heralded Jesus' birth. Furthermore, Persia's historic legacy of tolerance toward various cultures and religions established a crucial precedent that would help set the stage for the later spread of Judaism and, eventually, Christianity throughout the Roman Empire. The Achaemenid Persian Empire was famous for allowing its diverse subjects to maintain their religious practices, a policy that would significantly influence later ruling powers, including Rome. This environment of religious freedom greatly contributed to the flourishing of Jewish communities across the region and provided the necessary groundwork for the eventual, worldwide spread of the gospel message. As we bring this exploration of Persia's pivotal biblical role to a close, it is essential to look forward and consider the future role of Iran in light of biblical prophecy. Many scholars and theologians hold the belief that Iran, still identified in biblical prophecy as Persia, is destined to play a central and key role in the dramatic events of the end times. One of the most significant prophecies involving Persia is articulated in Ezekiel 38-39. Where the prophet describes a massive coalition of nations that will ultimately rise up against Israel in the last days. Among these nations is Persia, which is prophesied to join forces with Gog of Magog and other regional powers in a massive, final confrontation often referred to as the War of Gog and Magog. This prophecy, commonly interpreted as an event yet to unfold, depicts a final struggle between the forces of evil and God's people, with Israel at the very epicenter of the conflict. While the precise nature and timing of this war remain subjects of intense debate, the explicit inclusion of Persia, modern-day Iran, in this prophecy strongly suggests that Iran's influence in the region will continue to carry immense spiritual significance right up until the end times. Additionally, Daniel's prophecies concerning the inevitable rise and fall of global empires, including Persia, point to a broader, overarching theme: God's absolute sovereignty over all the nations. Persia's extensive role in biblical prophecy demonstrates unequivocally that no empire, regardless of its power or size, operates outside of God's complete control. God raises up nations, and he also brings them down, all perfectly aligned with his divine and eternal plan. As we observe modern-day events unfolding in the Middle East, including the ongoing geopolitical tensions between Iran and Israel, it is crucial to remember that these events are part of a much grander, ancient story. A story that was initiated in the sacred pages of the Bible and that will culminate in the final, complete fulfillment of God's promises. The story of Persia, now modern-day Iran, in the Bible is one of the most remarkable and compelling examples of how God can utilize even the most unexpected or unlikely nations to fulfill his profound divine purposes. From the earliest descendants of Japheth through Madai to the world-changing rise of Cyrus the Great, Persia played an utterly pivotal role in biblical history, ensuring everything from the physical restoration of Israel to the providential protection of the Jewish people as recorded in the Book of Esther. But Persia's significance is not confined to its historical accomplishments. The prophecies of Daniel, Isaiah, and Ezekiel constantly remind us that Persia was, and remains, a vital piece of God's larger plan, not only for the nations of the past but for the very future of the world. Iran's place in biblical prophecy points directly to its continued importance in the unfolding events leading up to the end times. As we examine the modern world, particularly the fraught tensions involving Iran and Israel, it is essential to approach these events with an informed biblical perspective. God's absolute sovereignty over all nations means that every kingdom, every empire, and every leader is ultimately subject to his plan. The narrative of Persia serves as a powerful testament to the fact that God can use even foreign powers to faithfully fulfill his promises and ultimately bring about his final plan for salvation. Persia, now Iran, continues to exert a profound influence on the world stage, and its deep connection to the Bible serves as a constant reminder that history is far more than just the political ebb and flow of empires. It is the deliberate, majestic unfolding of God's eternal plan for the redemption of his people and the world.